Daniel, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Absolutely. The only thing is that we cannot see you.
Okay, let me turn on my video. Let me see if you can see me.
And
Yes.
I will switch away from the screen so people can actually see you big. And here we go. Stop. And
so I'm in an undisclosed location, far away from any bugs, any viruses. I had to climb a mountain, so can you hear me? The wind is blowing terribly.
The connection is surprisingly well.
But I heard it's like the warmth which kills the virus.
Yeah.
Yes. See, I'm thinking outside the box, Edith. You know, that's conventional wisdom. No, we're.
Well, you're looking very well. So
thank you. I took my bath in 70% rubbing alcohol this morning, so I don't have my whole top layer of skin is gone, but I think I'm
I believe in the power of alcohol. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exterior and interior. I know that about you. That's fantastic.
We'll work on that in 5 p.m. obviously. So Daniel, pleasure having you. 2 more sessions for us to go. I know you know the spiel. You know how we are processing this in the meantime because you listened in already. So there's a quick intro on you, there's a quick intro on Venza, and then up to whatever you prepared. And the question, please again, allow us, Ilaria promised to do it, but she did not.
I saw that. She had a lot to share.
In the end, please.
Sure, yeah, no, and I will try. I'll try not to be after getting. She did such a great job of pumping you up with all sorts of energy, and then bring in the guy to talk about data protection. There's nothing that can bring down a room like that. How shall I share my screen?
Ideally by the sharing button, obviously.
Now, where do I see that? Oh, the great big sharing button, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah. All right. Goodness gracious. All right.
Something, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, fantastic. All right, so this is a little presentation that my CIO and I frequently give. I've adjusted a little bit for today just to talk about some of the trends that are going on and talk about a more secure hotel. What's really crazy that occurred to me today is in the last 12 years since we founded the company, most of the time that we reference virus, it's malware, it's a data virus, but somehow the topic of virus has been supplanted to the original. It's like referencing a mouse, right? You know, it used to be a little critter, but now it's it's attached to your computer. But our focus is security, hotel security, hotel data security. A little bit about Venza. Who are we? Who is Venza? We're the data protection for hospitality. If you're seeking compliance around GDPR or the California statute, privacy regulations worldwide, or also PCI DSS. For example, we were listening very closely to PCI proxy, so very, very much related in that industry. PCI compliance being a major focus of our company. So we are focused strictly on hospitality, working with hotel groups around the world, and we're a privately held company with 3 offices globally. A little bit about us. So we do have this mountaineering theme. That's why I got the thing in the background. And we have a mascot called Rocky. And our idea is that you sometimes need a guide to get over that mountaintop in terms of data protection. And so we think of ourselves as kind of like big, fluffy, sometimes slobbery, but always happy to see you. St. Bernards. So we'll get you over the next level there. And there's a friend of ours, Marco, from the industry. Let's look at some of the members of our team. And also here we are again, just horsing around there at high tech. Hopefully there'll be a high tech again.
San Antonio is small.
So some of the members of our team dressing up as Rocky the St. Bernard. I am with our European team located here in Den Haag, in the Netherlands. So glad to be with you. So just I've got just a few things prepared, and then I want to leave a lot of times to chit chat. Just talking about GDPR. It was the hot topic not too long ago, and everyone was concerned about it. It is still a major topic, and there's been a lot more enforcement activity around it. But in addition to that, there was the CS Hub, a security website, had their 6 trends for 2020. Not included was the coronavirus, so they didn't do a good job of predicting that. I don't know if they could have when they sent this out back in December, but in terms of technology trends, these are the trends that that they outlined. Evolving threats, so phishing still being a major issue. Cybersecurity budgets are going to increase. Privacy regulations will become more the norm around the world. Cloud as more of a threat as it had been in the past. So are your data secure in the cloud? That's a bigger topic now. The desire to find security talent continues to be almost a crisis, in that sophistication of systems, the tech stack is growing more sophisticated. You're looking to innovate in the hotel space. Do you have the talent to make sure that your items are secure? And then security awareness is a top priority. We are in a people industry, making sure our people are aware. So that's not something from Venza. That is a trend, and we thought that was interesting because it's very much right in our bailiwick in terms of what we do. Just for the sake of time, these are some of the big events that are happening in the last 18 months. We'll talk about some of the breaches. Of course, everybody heard about the Marriott breach, and then some of the initial enforcement activities around the GDPR. And then you saw even more activities around the GDPR. There was the release of the data privacy benchmark study, which was really was a shot heard around the world in terms of just exactly what companies could get out of their investment for privacy compliance and how beneficial it is. And then there's even more industry guidance that's available. This is a little bit of a plug for HTNG. I have the great honor of being the co-chair of the Global Privacy Regulation Work Group for that organization. So if you are keen to be involved in HTNG, or if you've considered it, I hope you will. I really like it as a group of people working elbow to elbow. And we had our updated white paper on privacy regulations for hospitality. So if you're scratching your head as a hotel company saying, what do I do about these privacy regulations, a good place to start is the white paper that HTNG put out. The work group consists of vendors, consultants, hoteliers, academics, legal experts getting together and saying, what does the industry need to know? What tools are out there? So it's a kind of sales-free environment where you can get really rich information. So I recommend that. I always like to make kind of vaguely sexual innuendos in any of my presentations, so that's why I reference friends with benefits. But in this case, I'm referencing how privacy and security are really two sides of the same coin. They work together. So we're looking for security to maintain and secure that data on guests and employees. Privacy is the look at, well, really, do we need to know this data? Do we need to know this information about our guests? And what is providing our guests really rich experiences? And and anything beyond that might be providing us a liability as an organization. So our focus at Venza is really helping with that fine balance. And the friends with benefits component is, if you are looking to establish that fine balance, there's benefits on both sides. In particular, 15% reduction in data breach risk by doing the work of becoming compliant to something like GDPR. So that's something that we would love to talk to you more about at Venza. So the title of the presentation is just 10 brief steps on how to have a more secure hotel. Number one, and I'll fly through this and then share this this presentation. You can click through all you like. But number one, making sure that you find out where your data is, where your data are, what your processing activities are. And so that means doing a proper registry. That's step number one. Assessing. Okay, so then once you find out what data you're processing, do you have the legitimate interest assessment done? Have you assessed that you actually can do that? Are you following standards such as the PCI DSS? So make sure that you have assessed your activities once you figure out what you're doing. Roles assignment is super important, especially with in hospitality. You've got many different people playing many different roles, multiple entities getting together to maybe there's a single asset that a couple different entities may own that. Somebody else is operating it, etc. So really doing that organizational understanding is going through that process is super important. For all of your data needs. It seems maybe tangential, but it is actually very much central to having a secure hotel in terms of data security. Legacy data. This is something that that once you've done that registry, you understand where your data are. Finding out that you may be processing data that is not providing you any value, or at worst case scenarios, providing you liability. So if you are processing that data, even just storing it, and you do not have any value for it, and you don't have a legal basis for processing that data, make sure that you you get rid of it and that you've documented that process. So that's a big step. So tech stack is growing in terms of its complexity. Make sure that we are getting rid of any data processing activities that are illegal or not valuable. Policies assessed. This is kind of this is where things get really boring. Oh, we got to update a policy, yes, and we have to hand it out to the staff and make sure and document people. Nobody's getting excited about that. I see you dancing, Daniel. Yet nobody gets excited about that, but that stuff is so crucial because you've got to be able to demonstrate that you've done it. So nobody gets excited about that except for Daniel because I saw you dancing. But just examples of some of the policies that you need to get help with. It's step number 6, and we can go back to these afterwards. I'll just fly through them. Step number 6 is because things are getting more and more sophisticated, have your security in the hands of a professional. Reach out to people that know what to do, and make sure you layer your security activities. So it's not just, well, we have a firewall in place, we should be good. Not equivalent. And be very, very mindful of anybody that just says, oh yes, we're compliant. I mean, the idea of being compliant in a matter of a few days just by checking off a thing and sending it away and saying, oh yeah, I hope that's good. That kind of I've got Igor from Young Frankenstein there. I mean, yes, master, 100% compliance. Be mindful of those kind of promises. So SARs, people are thinking SARs and as a virus know that as subject action requests for a data subject, people reaching out and saying, hey, what are you using my data for? And also breach and purge procedures. So make sure that your organization has a plan in place to reach out and respond to crises or requests from the general public. Having a ham-fisted response to a data subject request, just exactly why are you using my data? Why do you need to know my birth date? Why is it important that you know my my wedding anniversary, my children's names, etc., and being able to respond in line with the organization's commitment to privacy and their processing activities is going to be pretty key. So having those procedures in place. Agreements. We are a multifaceted industry. Our relationship between hoteliers and suppliers it's a symbiotic relationship, everybody working together, making sure that those agreements are up to date with the recent laws, reviewing those data processing agreements to make sure that to make sure you know who is a vendor, who is a supplier, or I should say who is a processor and who's a controller of that data. If that processor is to use that data for something beyond what is in that agreement, that'll play a very important role in any kind of potential outcome from a data breach, or if there's any kind of audit by a supervisory authority. So making sure that those agreements are really looked at really closely, and it might mean just charting it out. Where is that? Where does that data go? And you'll see a number of numbers here, but you might see where it references 1 and 2 and 3, etc. These are all data processing, data sharing agreements. When you're mapping things out, make sure that you know just precisely where those agreements are, and you've got it all charted out. Email usage and as a processing system is troublesome. We're using it all the time. There's a lot of personal data that is found within emails, a lot of booking information found within emails, and if it's not appropriately categorized and stored, you can have a considerable liability on your hand. There's a lot of information in emails. So you take that and the risk of something like phishing, and you've got considerable reason to be concerned. So training and awareness program that's very near and dear to our hearts at Venza, but it's a very much essential part of should be a part of your strategy. So that's in there. And just a bonus advice: hey, take email hygiene seriously. Just like we need to wash our hands for 30 seconds after every couple of hours or whatever in order to be clean. Make sure you're taking hygiene with emails very seriously. Studies show that approximately 1/4 of every business in 2019 was hit by ransomware. On average, the damage of ransomware can last on average around 26 days. So if you have a ransomware attack, the impact could hit the organization and last as much as 26 days. That's a huge business continuity risk. And so take email hygiene seriously. And you said leave 5 minutes. I'm right at 5 minutes.
I like how Daniel makes 5 out of 10. So Iris,
but yeah, let's. I think, all taken together, like one of the most important things here is that stay on top, right? Like, I mean, it's like whatever you do, it's not just a thing you do once and then you're done kind of thing.
Yeah.
The most important thing, I think, is that you regularly assess and review, even if you think you've done all the necessary, but you might have a new member in the team, or you might have a new process or a new tool you're using, whatever, and you always need to make sure that it fits your assessment and whatnot.
Yeah, that's that whole. You're absolutely right. I mean, if you're looking at that tech stack and you do all of your registry, and you might think, oh, we're in good shape, but then all of a sudden you introduce a new innovation, which is great. We want to have innovation, but the idea of privacy compliance and GDPR, at the center of GDPR is that privacy by design, that notion that Are we protecting privacy? Are we only processing the data that we really have to? And so it needs to be a mindset. It's a paradigm that needs to be adopted.
And like, yeah, you said you were listening in to the PCI proxy session from earlier this morning, and we were talking about tokenization in terms of PCI there.
Yeah.
But what do you think about like tokenization in terms of PII? Do you think we're going in that direction? Do you think it's going to grow stronger? I mean, in some areas it is being used, but it's not a huge adoption rate so far.
Right. So I think it's an incredibly, because of the breadth of those that need to have access in order to fulfill against that process of personal data. The reason most of that personal data, unlike the personal financial data, just those credit card information, it's a finite number of people that need to have access to the credit card environment. That CDE is just, there's who is processing that and who has access to that is really finite. And so I think it makes more sense to tokenize. I think what PCI proxy was saying with regards to tokenization, great. Reduce your scope as much as you possibly can. Hey, hoteliers, reduce. Just because we help people with PCI DSS does not mean that Venza wants it to be a complicated process. You should really do everything you can to reduce your scope. I think it's going to be a lot more challenging because of the for personal information, because of the range of people within an organization that need to have access to that, and how it comes in from so many different ways.
But I don't know. I think, like, although this is the extreme, I do think that we're still arguing in a wrong way, right? Like, years ago, we would argue, we really need that credit card number in the comments of the reservation. You know, there is no other way that I can do it. I need it. The same that we would argue today, or some operators argue, I really need your spouse's birthday. You know, there is no other way.
Yeah.
I think, like, what you're talking about, like email hygiene, or even like, you know, on the data of the personal data, do we really need X, Y, Z? Yes, tokenization is taking it to the extreme, but I think we really don't need all the data we think we need.
Oh, I agree 100%. There is a lot of data that you know, the mantra has been, just tell me everything about my guests. That's the only way I could possibly that I can compete. And I think that is a that is a mentality that we are going to be looking away from, because I think more and more of us as guests start to get that sinking, creepy feeling, like, why do you know all this stuff about me? So I think they will respond. The successful organizations will respond with a very smart relationship and position themselves as a data steward, and not asking you more than absolutely needed.
Tokenization. No, I'm joking.
Good. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if tokenization is great, but I think they still need to have I still think that there needs to be a reduction in overall the kind of information that they're getting, or make sure that it's absolutely aligned to a business process, and it is truly providing value to the guests and the employees. Don't forget the employees. Super important.
As Daniel was starting 2 minutes late, we'll do another 2 minutes as well.
Okay. Yeah, just one question, Daniel. At the beginning, I saw you're working with 150 plus hotel chains, right? Hotel chains obviously have a bit more resources. They can maybe map out processes and stuff like that. So you showed it in a very professional way, how it is done, ideally. So what tip can you give to an individual hotel who may not have as much financial resources or know-how in the hotel to actually start it is a big process, right? Checking everything in detail.
And if I may add to that, Daniel, as well, because that's in line with what I wanted to ask. do hoteliers actually understand what you do? Point one, not the big players, they get it. Yeah, I get that. But do they understand what you do?
Yeah.
And how do you educate the market, or how do you educate hotels in understanding what the big PCI and security issue is about, and how to process that and how to take action?
Yeah, no, there is a sizable amount of education that goes into all of our conversations, and why it's important. So do they understand what we're doing? I think that unfortunately there is no shortage of all sorts of, there's stories out there, and they see it happening, the Marriott breach in Starwood, or recently MGM in the Las Vegas Strip getting hit. So understanding that breaches are bad and that they can have a negative impact can be very scary. And so they understand that aspect. Now, when we talk about like a registry and understanding where all your processes are, your business, your data processing activities, and all those systems, that is something that, in particular, CIOs, they get that. They understand that. They are terrified of rogue IT, and so we don't have to do a lot of education on that front. It is talking to their boards and and ownership and saying this is important. Our digital assets is a big valuable component. And to answer you, to answer your question around the big chains, we work with independent hotels, single properties, as well as large hotel groups, flying flags of the big chains, as well as independent brands. Some people say with regards to data risk, I don't know if it's too crude of a metaphor, but it's kind of like you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your other campers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, there are some very, very small. There are some very small. I have a dark sense of humor. There are some very small methodical steps that you can make. Here I am talking, the climbing St. Bernard up the mountain, but you don't have to do a full-blown everything program and invest thousands upon thousands in order to make it a meaningful impact. There are some low-hanging fruit activities, starting with starting with getting some awareness to your team, to some basic best practices, conducting some phishing simulations. These are very straightforward things, and sometimes smaller properties, it's much easier to do your mapping activity. There are some free tools available. It's not that challenging. Just burying your head in the sand is not an option.
Is there some sort of formula on the market, or from you maybe, to say how much of the revenue or the profit should be invested in security? Is there some sort of benchmark?
That's a great question. Yeah, I don't have that off the top. That's a great question to find out what on average, because we do reference the amount of data protection security investments have gone up. I don't have that number at the top of my head in terms of what hotel companies ought to be investing year over year. It's astonishing how small it is, though, with the impact. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, we are running out of time.
Just back to like the other question.
No, we are 5 minutes over. Okay. Peter and Maria, we will give you 5 minutes more as well.
But it was literally just like the question you had, like, on where hotels start. I mean, one of the things Daniel has been doing when we talk about PII is like with the HTMG, work group on GDPR and whatnot, there was a checklist created where hotels can literally test themselves. I was on that work group as well, working with them. And that would be a great start to really like, well, like, do I have this? Do I have whatever?
Okay, we have a final question actually coming in from Peter, who will be our next panelist. So that's fair, I guess.
And you stop now. That is great.
Right. So Peter, I unmuted you.
Hi everybody, how are you?
Hi Peter, how are you doing?
Thought you can
Good.
ask
Let me
a
just
question.
let me switch that camera on. Sorry, I just didn't hear what you said then. Could you say that again?
I said I just unmuted you so that you can ask your question yourself.
Yeah, certainly. So the question that I had was, obviously there's a huge push to know your customer and own your customer and to create hyper-personalized marketing. And of course, we were talking in the last panel there about the concerns around how much data do you actually need. And of course, to create a level of hyper-personalization, you actually need to know quite intimate things about your customer.
And there he stopped.
Oh,
Yeah, I just.
So I was wondering how you wouldn't.
it's on this line too.
Daniel, it's not on your line.
Okay.
I think it's on Peter's line.
Okay.
Peter,
I'm wondering how you would find you wouldn't.
How do you find the balance between gathering all that information and then being in? Well, I think if I had a nickel for every time I've heard this in the last 6 months, is you just really know who your customers, what your ideal customer as a hotelier is. So if you've got the kinds of customers that are going to want to have that very personalized and a lot of information about them, make sure that is part of your organizational strategy. You communicate it to the market. You've let your customers know that this is what you're after, and why you're doing it, and be very, very upfront about it, because anything beyond that will feel really creepy. And so the things that I have tolerance for with regards to customers, or I should say, things that my 18-year-old son has tolerance for with regards to how much he shares, very different than me. And so if you're looking for the university student crowd and they want to have this kind of exchange of information, and they want to, that might be a kind of property that has a very aggressive know your customer strategy. If you're looking for the middle-aged curmudgeon demographic like myself, who doesn't, I don't want you to know a lot about me, I just want the transaction and that's it, then don't have that part of your strategy. Now, my son's a lot more fun, he's better looking, I got a little more money. So depends on what kind of demographic.
But he could use your money, so
yes, he could. He has ways of getting it. Yeah, I talk to my wife about that frequently. Yeah. Are you listening into my conversations, Daniel? I think there's been a data breach.
You told me back in Paris at our camp. So, Lena, the final question for Daniel. And
how can anyone reach out to you, and where can we find you?
Yeah, certainly Daniel Johnson, LinkedIn, venzagroup.com. That would be
and find that top of the mountain.
Sorry?
You need to find, like, whoever wants to find you is that top of the mountain, which is...
Yeah, that's right. I'm going up there. Put my
right.
stuff back on.
Yeah. Okay, back to Cold Mountain. So thank you, Daniel, for your time.
Thank you.
And sorry to Maria and to Peter for being a little bit late, like 8 minutes or something. We'll make up for that. And Daniel, have a great afternoon in The Hague. And I hope to see you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.